Sabars is a planet of conquest and collapse, found in the frontier regions of the galaxy, a place where colonial rule did not exist. Human settlement was extremely widespread, with colonial protectorates being founded, but local supply and trade routes made maintaining these colonies quite difficult, and so many were abandoned. The slow collapse of these colonies gave way to civilizations which now form most of the nations on Sabars. As part of a multi-episode series, we will be diving into the nations and the continents of Sabars, starting with Vastia and the Mughan Republic, and their complicated history with each other. The tale of Vastia is one of rebirth. What we now know as the Vastian state was little more than farming settlements in 2115. Much of the destiny of Vastia can be found in one man, Commander Jarek Vehln.
I remember the quaintness of the old republic. I, with my mother and father, would toil the fields night and day. It was then to which I asked, why? For survival? Was that our purpose? To just survive and carve out a meager existence while the great civilization beyond our frontier enjoy all the gifts of human colonization?
Vastia would attempt to become a republic, organising under a decentralised congress under President Denis Selt. The republic was sadly weak and inefficient, with the squabbling congress unable to centralise. This problem would cause significant instability under the republic. Jarek would soon join the territorial militia as a way to earn some extra money, training with the most rudimentary of weapons. His early training would consist of fighting bandits in the hills under the banner of the Kareg War band. These bandits, primarily mercenaries and disassociated servicemen, would be fairly well equipped, leading to heavy losses. The Kareg War was excessively brutal, with the Vastian militia often outnumbering the warband, but taking heavy losses and ending up in brutal hand-to-hand combat. However, the militia eventually overcame the threat. Jarek, who was promoted to group leader at the time, would push for stricter training and professionalism, massively pushing advanced weapons training and the art of stealing and maintaining enemy weapons, as well as the reliance on melee weapons, which would become Vastian military tradition, turning his militia group into one of the best fighting forces in the Republic. He, along with several other leaders, would advocate for a more centralised republic to reflect the fighting force that was beginning to emerge, and that the militia system was outdated for the problems the Republic faces. While Selt was voted out of office by a new candidate, he still represented the old guard, those who wanted to keep the Republic as it was. And this doctrine could not be shaken easily, being present in most of the institutions. It was only after another war that Vastian nationalism took hold. One of the subcontinents was the nation of Valantia, a large merchant republic stretching from eastern Vastia to the Suvla Island and the modern-day territory of the Commonwealth of the Mantarines. Valantia would see the Republic as an easy target to expand its merchant empire, quickly starting the First Vastian War. While initially the militia were unprepared, they managed to hold a defensive line, while Jarek's men would fight bitterly in the Northern Theatre and the Silai Peninsula. By then a man of 27, in 2134, he would lead his forces bravely against the Valantian troops, famously leading a charge against enemy positions, winning several victories in a matter of months.
I remember the landing on Solva Island. We were on rowboats across the sea. The men were shaking in the fresh winter morning. The sound of gunfire echoed around, and a large, hulking aircraft zipped overhead. At the time, it seemed hopeless. How could a collection of militant men with old Earth weaponry be able to take this island, let alone Valentia? When we hit the beach and ran up the hill, all hell broke loose. Bullets and blaster rounds shook the earth as many of my men collapsed onto the sand. We took cover by some rocks, while many found safety in any natural depression of the ground. I remember my men asking, What do we do now, sir? Only one thing came to me. We would charge, I said. Fix bayonets and charge. Then he said it was suicide, but would you rather die here, being picked off, or die fighting? I blew my whistle, and we ascended the hill with a sheer ferocity. They made us pay for every trench, and every gun emplacement. But it was a price we would gladly pay.
They'd been pushed off the Vastian mainland, retreating to their islands. Despite their technological disadvantage, they began to invade their islands using small fishing boats to carry troops over. Despite the landings being a success, the Valantian Air Force dominated the skies, causing many boats to be sunk. But once the forces were on the island, they began to rout the Valantian forces, taking the Suvla island in a few weeks. By then, the Valantians were ready to make peace. Their administration was increasingly unpopular with the Mantarine people, rebelling and causing their leaders to agree to unify with the Vastians, with the Mantarines gaining independence. Massive celebrations were held in the streets, as the militia paraded through the major cities. But while the nation celebrated, politically, there was a crisis. The old guard was looking more and more unpopular, as calls for federalization became louder and louder. Jarek, now a retired captain, would enter politics as part of the Vastian Union Party, still wearing his militia uniform as a symbol of national pride. Harrison Bennett, leader of the VUP, would also help propel the party. While politically capable, Jarek would believe he did not have the real-life experience that a Vastian nationalist party required. Being from one of the rich families in the bustling city of Quezon, the nation's capital, someone who reaped the benefits of an industrializing Vastian state, but not necessarily someone who helped build it. By 2142, tensions in Vastia had come to a head, with the election of the Vastian Union Party under Bennett, with Vehln acting as Vice-Chancellor. While Bennett ran with a steady hand, Vehln would be the lifeblood of the Vastian state, with his fiery speeches becoming the face of Vastian nationalism. He would soon write his founding political document, The Force of Will, a political manifesto which outlined his belief in Vastian nationalism, and that through conquest they had a right to manifest their destiny as much as they saw fit, seeking to catch up with the rest of their neighbours. This document would cement Vehln in history as one of Vastia's founding fathers. This political infighting would come to a head when Bennett became increasingly unpopular within the VUP, which would see him overthrown in a military coup. Vehln would ascend to the title of Semperin, meaning eternal leader in the Vastian dialect. Under Vehln, the Republic would begin to mobilise. His loyal militia division, which had served him in the war, would be reorganised into the Semper Custodia, becoming his personal bodyguards. Vastian history would be taught in schools, learning about the triumphs of the past and Vehln's achievements. A cult of personality would develop around him as the father of the nation. He would redesign the flag, and by 2145 he would declare the Grand Vastian State, a paternal republic with him on top. By 2150, Vastia would wish to expand further. The Mughan Republic, one of the oldest states still standing in its current form, saw the large docks as its solution to its crippling debt. Recent diplomatic fallouts with neighbouring states had led to Vastia being labelled as a threat. The opening act of the war was in Operation Trident, a large aerial and land invasion of southern Mughan.
When the Vastians first landed on our republic, I was only 9 years old at the time. I remember the calmness of it. I was walking through the city with my parents when, all of a sudden, the howl of jets whooshed over us, with explosions following soon after. I didn't know what was happening. My first exposure to war was chaotic, but I suppose all war is chaos. Since then, they have had a stranglehold upon us. They teach us their language, their culture. Their soldiers patrol day and night in our cities, and turn the rifle to you if you so much as put a toe out of line.
In a matter of months, they would push back the Mughan forces further and further back, right towards the northern mountains. By then, the Mughan Republic and its allies would surrender, and once again, Vastia would swoop in for the kill. The lands of the south would be reorganised into the Vastian corporate territories, a large vassal state made up of ruling syndicates and corporations leeching off the land. Large garrisons would occupy major cities, and the people's major landmarks in history would begin to be erased. Most Mughan refugees settled into a state called New Sanctuary. Located around the northern mountains, it was a cobbled-together republic with big dreams, but not fulfilled execution. While the Vastians celebrated their victory in their colony, it was a different story there. It soon became a land of crime and politics of all kinds. Martin Mannings, a Mughan native who had seen the Vastian invasion firsthand, would soon get involved in anti-Vastian politics. He would join the Mughan Republican Party. While only a member, he would slowly become influential for his fierce speeches and defiant nature. His role would slowly warp into security as he would organise the party's paramilitary to keep order at rallies. His bodyguard squad would soon create what was known as the Mughan Liberation Militia, an armed paramilitary organisation which advocated for a rebellion against the Vastian occupiers. With both organisations frequently working together, they would be run by very different people. Edwin Bellero, a man of 34, who would rise the ranks of the party and become its leading minister, developing a positive relation with the MLM. Bellero, while a fierce Mughan patriot, was not one to compromise.
During my tenure as minister of the Mughan Republican Party, I observed many things. I would often meet with local politicians and influential figures over dinner in the hope of securing more funding and members to our cause. But these people would be more than worthless to me. They would talk of the Mughan people needing to work with the system and appeal to our overlords, as if we were in the wrong for wanting to take back what had been taken from us. These were local ministers of the subdivisions, made men, who would talk a big game at the dinner table about taking action and plans of attack. But when the idea of revolution came into their heads, they would get cold feet. New Sanctuary is also prey to this folly. Many talk of joining the United States of Samaria, the dead dream of a colonial republic. They don't mind wearing a collar. They just want to change who holds the leash. This simply will not do. The Mughan people are nobody's servants. We were brought into occupation, and now it is our job to undo it. New Sanctuary is not, nor will it ever be, a replacement for our republic. Its people live in squalor, with large slums being christened with the names of our old cities. Meanwhile, Boy Scouts with machine guns dream of a sweeping offensive to take back Vastia. I fear that they're doomed to fail.
But an opportunity would reveal itself. A major conflict on the planet was rearing its head. A Great War. By 2170, the great powers had fallen into conflict. After the collapse of the United States of Samaria, the states had begun to fall under the sway of other powers, and eager foreign powers begin to find themselves in conflict with each other. Vastia would join the Imperial Alliance with the Galician Empire.
Our republic has grown rapidly in these last few decades. What was once a small community of farmers has now grown into an industrial republic, where its people now enjoy the gift of excess. But we have fought a long, hard battle for these gifts. We have fought bandits, conquerors, and colonists to get to this point. Outclassed and outgunned, but still we preserved. We have pushed the Mughan's people into submission, and with the recent conflict in the other continents of Sabar, more will follow. We, along with the Glizkan allies, will crush all invaders, and any of those who would destroy our country.
And help back the royalists in former USS territories. This was their chance. Mannings would organise his insurgents around the capital of the corporate territories and the other major cities, and wait for the perfect moment to strike. In the early hours of the morning, the Chancellor of the VCT would be assassinated by the Mughan Liberation Militia in 2172. Seeing this as the signal, New Sanctuary would begin Operation Damocles, a full land invasion of the VCT, with the Liberation Militia also starting an uprising. With this, the Vastian corporate territories would collapse, with multiple uprisings spreading up across the country. Mannings would announce on the radio their uprising.
It has been over 2 decades since the Vastian invaders torn through our land and its people. They have destroyed our culture and oppressed our citizens. They intend to stretch their claws into other frontiers, but I say no more. No more shall the Mughan people be oppressed by the gaping jaws of tyranny, with their leaders fighting their Great War as they send legions of their men to die in the slaughter of foreign nations for foreign objectives. Let us seize this day and let us rise to arms. Today shall go down in history as the day we take back our country. Do not count days, do not count miles, count only those you have killed. This is the cry of your Mughan earth. Death to the Vastian invader!
And so began the War of National Liberation. The Mughan Liberation Militia, allied with other rebel groups, would combat Vastian forces and other separatist groups.
I'm lonesome since I crossed the hill and o'er the moor and valley. Such grievous thoughts my heart do fill since parting with my Sally. I seek no more the fine or gay, for each does but remind me how swift the hours did pass away with the girl I left behind me. Oh, ne'er shall I forget the night the stars are bright above me, and gently lent their silvery light when first she vowed to love me. But now I'm bound to bright and kind heaven, then pray guide me and send me safely back again to the girl I left behind me.
While the Mughan people rebelled to liberate themselves from Vastian rule, let's turn to the rest of the world. The Great War was in full swing. The Imperial Alliance was fighting against the Spiritual Union of the Western Isles, who subsequently was fighting the Sabars Defence Agreement, a democratic alliance of nations, as well as any anti-leftist rebellions, especially against the Commonwealth of Janzia, with its colonies in full revolt. The Liberation Militia would waste no time. They would make sweeping offensives into the south. The Vastians, outraged by this, would send any spare forces they could to plug the gap. But many were without training or sufficient equipment. New Sanctuary would struggle against the Vastian hordes, while Bellero was all too happy to let the Sanctuarians bear the brunt of the fighting. Mannings would disagree. Despite their differing political opinions, they were still Mughan. During the 8 or so years of the war, the southern continent of Oras would fall into chaos. The fighting would destroy much of the infrastructure, leading to either side inheriting a wasteland if they were to succeed. On top of this, much of the detailed history is unknown due to the chaos of the era. It is only decades after the fact that the truth is finally being revealed. While outwardly united, Manning and Bellero would become increasingly more argumentative. Mannings would adopt the United Front doctrine, a strategy which proposed that the MLM needed the support of its allies to wage its war against Vastia. Bellero would instead adopt a more conservative approach. Making allies with leftist groups due to having a common enemy was futile. In a famous Congress speech, he would propose a controversial policy.
My allegiance is to the Mughan Republic, and the Mughan Republic alone. I like to think that we, as sons of that nation, should act in its best interests. There are those who want to ally us with anarchists, socialists, and rebels of the militant kind. The enemy of our enemy is not always our friend. For when we no longer have a common enemy to fight, then they shall turn the guns on to us. Our aim is the independence and separation of the Mughan Republic against the Great State of Vastia. Where were our allies when they invaded in 2150? I feel our need to create a large united front with our so-called allies will be in vain, and the men and material needed to uphold such an order would be greatly needed on other fronts. Therefore, I say that peace with Vastia is the only option available to us. Why should we fight a war which is becoming increasingly more expensive to wage, when, at least under a peaceful settlement, we will have the freedom to pursue freedom, instead of total anarchy?
Mannings was outraged, and would quickly write back to respond to Bellero's proposal.
Your plan to make peace with Vastia would fly in the face of everything we've achieved. Are you sure you believe they will not sell us out to the highest bidder, or drop the boot as they have done several times before? My dear Minister, I fear you have made a grave mistake in considering this offer. Would this not count as treason? The road will be long and painful, but I would rather us die as freemen than as Vastian lapdogs.
While away from the front visiting family, a Mughan Liberation Militia hit squad would barge into his house, saying that Mannings needed to come with them under orders of Bellero for his safety. After following the men to a small area of the woods, Bellero would approach Mannings, who asked what it was all about, but with only a few words being muttered.
I'm sorry, old friend.
The men opened fire on Mannings, who collapsed and died almost instantly. After this, Bellero would break the news.
Martin Manning's death is a tragedy of the highest order, especially with the perpetrators. After conducting a recent report, it was found that members of the People's Liberation Vanguard were behind the attacks. This blatant act of terrorism from one of our own allies will not be taken lightly. I therefore propose retribution for this attack to pacify and quell these extremists from their dream of destroying the Republic.
After expressing a need to fire back at this betrayal, and that in this time of crisis he would elect himself as Chief Commodore of the Mughan Liberation Militia and Mughan Republican Party, he would effectively combine both entities together, with the militia acting as the official armed forces of the Republic. Under Bellero, the newly established Mughan Republic would approach Vastia with a condition of peace, with their primary demand being the recognition of the Mughan Republic. While Vastia would initially reject it, they would later reconsider. They would accept it, but under heavy pretenses. not only assistance in the Great War with a minimum of 2 divisions being sent over to aid the war effort, plus Lend-Lease, but on top of that, corporate dominance over the land that they once conquered, as any attempt to reclaim their territories would be fruitless. Many did try to win it back, but these campaigns were doomed, fueled by zealous chargers and mercenaries. Bellero would agree to these terms and begin to put them in place. His first policies would see major reforms to the country following the formation of the Republic. Despite New Sanctuary's aid during the war, the MLM would slowly move away from them. But he would stand by the decision to attack the once united front, starting the years of bloodshed.
There are those who call me a tyrant. Those who say I've plunged the Republic into turmoil. War, in this day and age, is the proven ground for our Republic and our people. Why should we spare our future enemies for the sake of convenience? Why not fight now with our guns and our spirit? These are but growing pains in the revival of our Republic. Those who would wish to subvert the ideals that we stand for shall fall by the sword. In the fields and streets, we combat these radicals. We are now no longer simple partisans. No, we are now an army, which is more than a match for any would-be guerrilla fighter. I have full confidence in the Mughan armed forces and their victory in the field. Our planes now hang heavy over the skies of New Sanctuary and the Samorian lapdogs which inhabit it. I will not stand by and let these vultures ruin everything we've achieved. When we are on the edge of victory, we shall not slide into oblivion.
While the MLM were one of the best guerrilla groups that existed, Bellero insisted that they act like a proper army. Bellero by this time would make a lot of enemies, quickly going against anyone who was not loyal to him, including the Loyalists, those loyal to Mannings and his ideas, the Solar Army of Muga, a political faction which followed the Cosmic Divinity religion, a strange pagan religion meant to replace Christianity, turning all the planets into deities. The People's Liberation Vanguard, an anarcho-syndicalist group that was framed for Manning's death, as well as New Sanctuary. Bellero's policies, which alienated him from other Mughan allies, led to further guerrilla conflicts, not only against rebel groups and a war with New Sanctuary, backed by the USS. After the dust had settled, Bellero was on the ropes, and he was cast out of the party and exiled.